it's a fascinating thing to have a filter where you're just going to be curious as to how the self forms. And just in some way to go, okay, what's this somebody feel like? How is somebody experiencing this right now? And in the moments that you recognize that somebody has appeared, you're no longer identified that much. You can work with it. You can be humorous. You can be compassionate. And the truth is, again, we're not trying to get rid of the somebody, but when we're aware of the patterns, that makes room for a more natural intelligence and kindness and compassion and creativity to flow through. So, sometimes the somebody gets really, really strong, and it's a whole different world of how we begin to deconstruct it. It's not on the moment, like I was in the picnic and I said, oh, okay, somebody this too, and went like this. It's not so sudden. And I'll just give you a very brief example of one friend of mine whose daughter was addicted to heroin and cocaine and a bunch of other drugs, and this lasted over a period of about 8 years. And she was in and out of rehab centers. And the somebody that formed in my friend was an enabling mother that every time her daughter would leave the rehab but then hit bottom and be on the streets, she'd take her in and figure out how to get her into the next place. And so that was a somebody that was really hooked, really scared her daughter was going to die, and just her only behavior was, I have to help. I mean, she knew that she was enmeshed, but this was the somebody that was really, really solidified. And it took many, many months of feeling the pain of what was going on for her when she'd imagine surrendering and just handing it over, in some way taking the somebody and saying, okay, Mother of the Universe, you deal with this, I can't do it. She had to go to that level of surrendering her somebodyhood. And when I do this gesture a lot myself. It's not like I want to get rid of somebody. It's like, let this egoic self be held in something larger. Because the ego can't get rid of the ego. There can be a surrendering that comes from a deeper place than the ego. And so for her, it was many months of trying to surrender that all of her fears and her grasping into a sense of Great Mother of the Universe. That was her language. We can do it however. There is something larger than the ego we can offer ourselves into. And so for her, in that offering, it opened her up into the depths of the grief, of feeling, just this profound, bottomless grief. But what happened over time is that somebodyhood, that selfhood of the grasping, fearing mother loosened some, and she began to realize she could create the boundaries that actually could save her and her daughter perhaps in a different way. And she did that, and it forced her daughter actually to find the place inside her that wanted to live. It hit a real bottom. It forced it. And this story, and it's never ended. They're still alive, but is happy at this point because her daughter did go through the process of recovery. Doesn't always work out in a happy way, but the truth is we can't find the most creative, intelligent, and compassionate response until we hand over the somebody and give ourselves access to a more universal energy that can flow through us. So again, I want to say we're not trying to get rid of the ego. We need kind of the egoic self to strategize and navigate and move us through and be the one who banters with other people, or be the one in a role that is an authority in some situations and a student in others. We need the egoic self. But the egoic self, if we think that's who we are, is primarily going to be driven by fear and wanting. If we can remember the nobody, the wholeness of who we are, if we can remember that field of awakeness and tenderness and mystery that's really our source, then the somebodies that emerge through us will be filled with that light and that intelligence. In a few moments, we're going to do a practice of compassionate witnessing. But I just want to invite you in an informal way to practice, because this can be such a powerful filter as you move through the day, to just begin to notice when there's been a coagulation into a self sense that's really smaller than who you are. I mean, you can just say, is this really who I am? Notice it. Notice the kind of thoughts and feelings that feel most familiar. This is the somebodiness. Is this really who I am? And you can make it a practice informally when you're doing activities that don't involve a lot of thinking, like when you're washing the dishes, or if you go for a walk, or you're taking a shower, or driving. Just have the intention, I'm going to notice when there's a somebody that arises, when certain feelings or reactions happen. And you can even use the word somebody, just very gently. Okay, somebody has arisen. And get curious and get kind, because often there's a bit of self-judgment with it. Last thing I'll mention before we practice is the key moment when we really dissolve the identification with somebody is when, through our senses, we're fully here. When we're not living in any narrative, when the sounds are here that are right now arising, and there's a listening, and there's a feeling of the life in the body. When there's just this simple awakeness and openness, there's no ground for somebody to stand on. It's groundless. Most of the time, we're living in a map that has time, there's a present and a future, and we're on our way somewhere. Most moments, we're doing a task that we're trying to get done, and we're on our way somewhere. And in those moments, there's some interference, if we're believing in that self that's on the way, that stops us from really living in this dynamic beingness. So I want to read you a poem, and then we'll practice. This poem is called Talk About Walking by Louis Gander. Where am I going? I'm going out for a walk. I don't know where except outside. Outside argument, out beyond wallpapered walls. Outside, wherever it is where nobody ever imagines. Beyond where computers circumvent emotion. Where somebody shortens specs for rivets for airframes on today's flights. I'm taking off on my own 2 feet. I'm going to clear my head to watch mares' tails instead of TV. To listen to trees and silence, to see if I can still breathe. I'm going to be alone with myself, to see how it feels to embrace what my feet tell my head, what wind says in my good ear. I mean to let myself be embraced, to let go feeling so centripetally old. Do I know where I'm going? I don't. Or how long or far I have? No idea. No map. I said I was going to take a walk. When I'll be back, I'm not going to say. You can get the feeling that it takes some intention to get outside our map, our landlocked self, to bear witness to the patterning, to be kind towards it, and then to very on purpose re-enter this living moment, to take our walk and not know where we're going or when we're coming back, to just be. Okay, so let's practice a little, and then we'll close. So as you come into stillness and close your eyes, I'd like to offer the words of Rilke, who says, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final." So just let everything happen to you. See if you can rest as this openness that this whole world is playing in. Sense how out of the silence pours sound. Out of the stillness, this whole play of sensation. Just let everything happen. Let life be just as it is. Senses awake and open. Being that openness. Set your intention just to be noticing if there's some leaving of presence into some sense of somebodyhood. You notice the thoughts, the future, the past, and just sense how that coagulates into a somebody, a narrative. When you notice, just relax again. Witness. If you sense that there's any judgment, offer a gesture of kindness. And then come back into your senses, right here. Sense what it means to come back right here to the center of now. The center of now. In this wakeful presence, Is there any sense of a self, of a somebody? You might even ask, who am I? And then not to think, but rather relax back and sense the center of now. Wisdom tells me I'm nothing. Love tells me I'm everything. Between the two, my life flows.